South Africa's high rate of inequality and economic exclusion, there is a growing rift amongst citizens and a distrust of social partners and democratic institutions. This is a matter of serious concern which must be addressed, as it has corrosive impacts on South Africa's stability and future prosperity. In today's episode, the third in our sustainability series, focusing on what is important for Africa, we take a closer look at the status of South Africa's social cohesion, look at its benefits, and discuss tangible ways to build it in today's society. I'm Riante Padayachee, and joining me to unpack what I'm sure is going to be a riveting discussion is PwC Senior Economist Xhanti Payi. Xhanti, thank you so much for sitting down with us. I'm really looking forward to this one. So contextually, let's start there. Let's paint the picture, set the context. How are we to understand social cohesion in South Africa, or just the concept of social cohesion today?
I think importantly, perhaps we start with the very colloquial or general conversational English, because when we think about something that's coherent, we usually think about something that actually works together, that actually makes sense, that actually is connected in a sense. So when somebody says your argument is coherent, we usually mean you're actually making sense, that your arguments actually are connecting. But there's a better way, I guess, to think about it, and through its own pillars. So about 5 pillars, but I'll only mention maybe 3 of them. The first one really is about economic inclusion and social inclusion. The second one is political participation and political inclusion in public life. And perhaps the third one, and probably the one you've already mentioned in your introduction, is really about trust and the legitimacy in public institutions. And that's perhaps one that is starting to fade quite importantly. But basically, those are some of the key pillars. Maybe to even to add another one, and that's really around actually social connections and social trust amongst social partners.
And just to complete those 5 pillars for you, the 5th one being acceptance and belonging in society. Now, Xhanti, these pillars definitely sound to me as though they also serve or could serve as, an important guide to assess the state of social cohesion in a particular setting or society.
Sure.
Speaking about the state of social cohesion, how would you describe the state of social cohesion in South Africa today?
I think we have a really important and memorable example of this when we saw the KZN uprising a few years ago, in which really that social unrest came into a real hit. But it was communicating something that's quite important to us around what people are seeing and are feeling in terms of poverty, exclusion, and social deprivation. And just to say a little bit about social deprivation, which is really around people looking at society and feeling that they don't have what they deserve, what other people have, what they should have.
Yeah.
And we could see that when people were taking TVs, for example. We wouldn't think TV is about poverty, but we know also TV is what normal people have on an ordinary basis. And so people feeling excluded in that way. And that is a very good example, because it gives us a sense of how people then start to behave outside of norms of society, outside of the laws of the country. And really, it has been exemplified in South Africa through the many examples of really violence that we're seeing in criminality. And those are really the clear examples of a breakdown in social cohesion.
Yeah, and you would think a country as advanced as ours, or that has been enjoyed freedom for 3 decades, we would enjoy a better or healthier state of social cohesion. Definitely something that we need to strive towards. And just to cast it back to that July unrest in 2021. I recall President Cyril Ramaphosa saying, or telling the Human Rights Commission sometime after that, just this disruption, it had left nearly 2 million people unemployed, and that it had cost the economy about 50 billion rand. Those are not small numbers. 2 million people is 2 million livelihoods, but 2 million homes, right?
Absolutely.
Can we see it that way? So can you speak to me about what impact social or a lack of social cohesion has then on our economy?
A breakdown in social cohesion has really meaningful costs. Those are very clearly articulated because we could actually calculate it. But also we see other losses because we start to see in society that is unstable. And of course, instability is something that doesn't work very well for investment. People don't, for example, would not look to invest in an area like Durban where they think, it's unstable, that there's a potential breakout of violence anytime, that, citizens are unhappy. So we see less investment. When we see less investment, of course, we see less economic growth. When we see that, it means that we are not able to provide the jobs. And of course, it's got this feedback loop that is quite interesting. But certainly, it is something that has damaging impacts for the potential of a country economically and that stability. And so it is something that is critical to be able to build as a society.
Yeah, I mean, important point you make there. And this undoubtedly also now has this knock-on effect on people's livelihoods, their happiness, which could be the same for business and our business fraternity, which is so important. So considering the importance then of social cohesion in our society, what can we do to build it, especially from the perspective of our business community? Because our economy is incredibly important to every single one of us.
Sure. I think what is important is to recognize, of course, from the pillars that I mentioned, that they actually tell us or give us some guidelines in terms of meaningful actions that business can take in making sure that they participate in the building of social cohesion, in the building of economic trust and economic inclusion. So that's the creation of jobs and making sure that there's a trust in social institutions and social structures, that people are feeling participating, that they're part of the system. And one clear way of doing that is really a focus on the so-called ESG principles, or what we mean by the environment, society, and governance. These are important because, of course, we know some of the inequality that we are seeing is coming from the change in our environmental state. We know that obviously society is an important part for business to invest in, to make sure that they're a social partner. That's a level of collaboration that is important. And certainly governance. And governance really speaks to obviously how we do business, how we build the trust on business, and how we therefore build trust in the rest of the institution. So many businesses will have to actually invest in a meaningful way in actually making sure that they build ESG plans and strategies that are actually useful, and they can actually speak to the pillars of social cohesion in a very meaningful way. And that is something that then takes us forward, because otherwise, we are not going to be able to collaborate as a society, and that's important so that we can actually get all the social outcomes that we want. Because as you know, investment is important for business, so is growth for the business to itself to thrive. So this is not just an act of charity, but this is about actually business imperatives. And so it is something that we have to, as business, attend to.
Yeah, no, it is incredibly important. And as mundane or ordinary as it may sound, collaboration, as you mentioned, is key here. And that's what's going to be this key driver, right, of social cohesion. You mentioned these, obviously, ESG, each in its own. For the business fraternity to capitalize on this, out of the environmental, social, governance avenues, would you say that there are easy starts in any one of these where they're almost like quick wins for businesses to start looking or doing things down these avenues to, fast track the social cohesion?
There's definitely very easy quick wins, because the first thing around building trust, for example, remember I said, about social interactions and trust, that's important. And business has been already doing work. It's not as if business is not doing anything in terms of, investing in society, in building that social cohesion. And certainly in governance itself. So it's about first perhaps measuring what we are doing and being able then to communicate it quite effectively so that people see it. Because a lot of the work that's being done in business is not something that we actually readily see as communities. Yes. So actually communities being able to access the work that you've been doing is very, very important. So measurement is one area where businesses can say, look, let's measure what we've been able to do. And then also in that measurement, what we still need to do or what we could do to be able to actually be better participants in society, to be able to be better players in building social cohesion. So that's probably the first easy one to do, is to first measure what your impact has been so far. And sometimes you'll come up with some negative things, but that also gives you space, obviously, to do better. So that's one quick area to do that. And then being able then to spend time then, using the same principles to actually build better.
And I mean, who wouldn't want to live in a society that thrives, right? Thank you, Xhanti, so much for your insights this morning. I really appreciate your time. And thank you to you, our online audience, for tuning in. Please join us next time where we discuss the importance of impact and why it is important for Africa.